Here's my Saints Row 4 commentary. Yeah, Saints Row 4 could have done a lot better. And you could have been able to go back in time. Like, literally go back in time. But that plot point was like, not utilized. And the whole thing about that is like going back in time, stopping Zinyak from blowing up the Earth, maybe even further back in time. Maybe go back in time and like going far back as Saints Row 1's timeline. And stop the death of Lynn. Lynn would thusly retconning the whole death of Lynn. Lynn wouldn't be dead. Maybe go back in time, back in like the timeline of Saints Row 2. Stop Marrow from kidnapping Carlos and having Carlos killed. Maybe go back in time, further back, before the Saints were formed, stopping the whole bad blood between the Vice Kings and the 3rd Street Saints by saving Ben King's sister, Angela King, and making sure that the Vice Kings would be longtime allies throughout the rest of the Saints Row franchise, and having the boss going back in time and stopping the boss from stepping foot on Alderman Hughes's yacht, and going back in time and warning Julius about betraying the Saints, thusly retconning like all of the other Saints Row games, like Saints Row 2, Saints Row the 3rd, Saints Row 4, Saints Row Got Out of Hell. But what sadly deepens me is that wasn't utilized. The boss, the current boss of the Saints, could go back in time and warn Julius not to betray the Saints. Going further back to when the boss was just a new blood, a new recruit of the 3rd Street Saints, and warn the previous boss, Julius, having Playa going back in time to warn Julius about not betraying the Saints. That means Aisha, like, go back in time and warn, like Johnny Gat back in like the Saints Row 2 timeline, warn Johnny to stay behind, or warn Aisha to go with Johnny, thusly saving her from being decapitated by Gionichi, the right-hand man, or the enforcer of the Ronin. And yet going far back to warning Johnny back in Saints Row the 3rd to let Sean D know and text Sean D that Zinyak was gonna snatch him away and leave a fake zombified corpse of Johnny in his place. And warning the Saints ahead of time, maybe going back during Saints Row 2 or like a period of time between Saints Row 2 and Saints Row 3, and warn Johnny that he was about to get kidnapped and snatched by Zinyak years later. And warning the boss to build allyship with not also the Brotherhood, working with the Brotherhood instead of going against them, and having the Brotherhood as an ally, thusly having the Vice Kings as an ally as well, thusly preventing the ever-expanding reach of the Morningstar. Thusly, the Morningstar would have some competition. The Saints wouldn't need Oleg. They wouldn't need at all the Steelport Pimp, Zemos. They wouldn't need Zemos. They wouldn't need Oleg. They wouldn't need Kinsey. They wouldn't need Angel de la Morte. They wouldn't need any of them. They would just easily go into Steelport, and then when they start running into trouble, and here's how it would have gone down. Zemo's getting gunned down by one of the DeWinter sisters. Upon him joining the Saints would have huge problems. Oleg would end up being snatched up by the Luchadors, killed upon the first moments of him, the first 5 months of him joining the Saints during Saints Row the Third. After Saints Row 1, the Vice Kings would be an ally of the Saints. The Brotherhood would have been the ally of the Saints. If the boss goes back in time and tell his younger self, and tell Julius not to go to war with the Vice Kings, and to work out a deal to share the spoils of the streets of Stillwater. That means, by extension, ever since Donnie got close to Lynn, the West Side Rulers would have been another ally of the Saints. That means Carlos wouldn't be dead, Lynn wouldn't be dead, and the West Side Rollers would still be around, thusly clipping the Los Carnales, clipping the Sons of Somdi, clipping the Ronin, and also keeping those 3 gangs from gaining any power back after being fenestrated from the streets of Stillwater. And that means with Donnie, he could have taken over, usurped, and had the Saints help him usurp leadership from the very leaders of the West Side Rollers, that would have been the one to lead the West Side Rollers, to go back in time and have a coalition, a small coalition of allies. That means the Rollers, the West Side Rollers, and the Vice Kings would be allies of each other. That means the Brotherhood would have been allies with them. That means the Saints would have been allies. Then it would have been a Steelport coalition going against the Steelport Syndicate. That means if Kinsey were to die at the hands of the Deckers, that means if the Morningstar was to kill Angel de la Morte and try to erase the Steelport branch of the Saints, that means that in likely retrospective, the Stillwater Coalition, which would have been going and bashing heads with the Steelport Syndicate, two cities going to war. The Steelport Syndicate invading Stillwater, Stillwater invading Steelport, and it's like a massive gang warfare between both cities until one multi-gang faction came out on top. That means the Saints from Saints with the Third, like the Steelport branch of the 3rd Street Saints, would not have happened at all. Or it would have happened the first 5 months of the Saints being in Steelport during Saints of the Third. That means all the former homies that were non-Saints related homies from Saints Row 1 and Saints Row 2 would come together as scouts to run out there on an expedition to Steelport. That means that stripper from Saints Row 1, that means Chicken Ned, that means Legal E, and a former Saint, Troy. That would mean Mr. Wong. That would mean Tobias. That'd mean Laura. Jane Valderrama would also go on like an expedition to still like a Steelport and head off, observing, scouting, and patrolling the streets of Steelport to see what Steelport has to offer. But here's the thing. Here's how it would have happened. Dex would have had his own gang. The Dex crew. All black. 100% black. That means all of the luchadors would be white. All of the Deckers would be white. That means the black members that are in the Deckers. That means the black members that are of in the luchadors, they would have been members of Dex's crew. And here's the thing. Here's the kicker. The only second in command would have been Professor Genki. And the Genki girls would have been Dex's lieutenants. And Professor Genki would have been his like right-hand man. And the like by extension the mascot community in Steelport would have been extensions of the very gang that Dex has led. And that means Dex would be working with Matt Miller and would be working with Eddie Kilbane Pryor and would be working with Philippe Lauren and would have coalition versus coalition. And here's the thing. There'd be a third coalition. That would be consisting of the Sons of Samdi, the Ronin, the Los Carnales, those three. And also, having that being said, it's a small coalition. The Ronin, the Sons of Samdi, the Los Carnales. But here's the thing. Going back in time and made sure that Ultor was still the enemy. So that's another coalition the Saints would have to fight and would have to end up taking over Ultor during like Saints Row the Third. That means Stag would be with the Steelport coalition, and that would make it a lot harder for the Saints. They would have allies, and they would take out one coalition, and then they would take out like another coalition. And Steelport would be under siege, and Stillwater would be conquered, divided into 4 gangs that are allies of each other. And here's the thing. All those activity characters from Saints Row 1 would be able to sneak in and head out of Stillwater. The one like activity characters from Saints Row 1 and Saints Row 2 would go and just round up, heading to Santo Ileso, come together, start a legitimate business, all together, working for one business. And they would get a lot of flack. They would call in allies from Stillwater. the Stillwater Coalition, which they would reach out to, just having Ultor jumping ship on like one of the three coalitions after each gang is clipped, and half of Ultor has been clipped, and the rest of whatever's left of Ultor gets taken over and jumping ship and rebuilding. And then the Saints would go to Santo Ileso, wiping out the Nuali, the Los Panteros, the Idols, Marshall Defense Industry, would have taken over Santo Ileso as another stomping ground. And then they would head back to Steelport, wipe out that coalition, and then have three major cities under Saints or the Steelport or Stillwater Coalition control. That means all the friends that the Julius said that they had in town, that the Saints were giving a hand, all conducted legal, legitimate business in the downtown part of Santo Ileso. Sadly, that's not the case, but I wish that would have been something that were to have happened. And continuing Saints Row 4's like cliffhanger, satisfying the what could have been cliffhanger if the Saints were to go back in time and seeing their younger self, and Shondi going back in time and telling her actual younger self to not be in the Saints hideout messing with the Loa dust, and would have had like the boss tell his slightly younger self from Centro 2 to warning, like getting on the phone like, hey, Shondi, my older self had told me to tell you that since how I started shit with the Sons of Somdi, they're going to try to send one of their own to kill you. You gotta bail or hide somewhere. And younger Shawnee would not have any issues dealing with a veteran child. But veteran child would be struggling, like, frustrated that he could not find Shawnee. So he goes back to Mr. Sunshine and the General, telling them that he failed, then he would turn against the Sons of Somdi and would join Shondi. And then they would rekindle their romance, veteran child becoming an official member, a turncoat that joined the Saints. Thusly, he would be alive, and who knows? And yes, Luz, who once was in the Los Carnales, would turn against her own boyfriend and just leave the gang life and leave the criminal underworld behind, and the Saints would just let her go free. She wouldn't need Orjuela Manuel to financially back her, because she would get a job at Ultor taking on what like a tour guide job that Julius was with at the time. Thusly, the Saints wouldn't fall apart, and there'd be like two to three versions of the Saints gang. The Steelport version, which is the Saints Row the third version, the Saints Row 1 version that's also happened to have the Saints Row 2 variation of version 1, and then the Santo Ileso version. But sadly, that's not how it would. That's just not how it is. But I'm just saying, Saints Row 4 could have concluded that cliffhanger. And from like the small little ship, the cargo hatch or whatever, would have been having like a way to explore Zinniak's big ass ship from the small little ship, going back and forth, and in the simulation causing major havoc, and in the Zin Empire not having an issue with messing up the simulation or causing trouble in the simulation anymore, because the Zin Empire would have been allies after the defeat of Zinniak back during like the events of Sancho III, and having the boss going back in time and saying to his slightly younger self from Sancho III and getting on the phone like saying, hey, go back there with Shondi and with Johnny and kill Zinniak and take over his intergalactic empire. You gotta do that now before Johnny Gat gets taken from Zinniak. Shawnee would not need to feel like that you have died. But no. Collision shit the bed on that. And the boss would be the one to warn everybody about Zinniak. That means the alien invasion in Centro 4 would have been null and void. The Saints would be stuck in the past. And eliminating the whole thing about Saints Row got out of hell taking place on the spaceship. Meaning, like, there'd be two gates at the Saints, like the 3rd Street Saints' headquarters. One being the top elevator on the top floor of the Saints HQ penthouse in Steelport, going up to the heavens, and another portal in the basement of the penthouse of the basement of the penthouse, connecting and going straight into hell, or in my case, the underworld, going to both places freely, and having heaven, hell, Stillwater, Steelport, and Santo Ileso, hell, heaven, and the Zen ship as 5 to 6 locations for the saints to go to. Like, head off on the ship and then zwee, all the way up to Zinyak's ship, sitting on the throne in Zinyak's throne room, or heading back down to Earth, hopping on 3 or 2 planes. One to Steelport, and the other to Santo Ileso, and then going from heading to Santo Ileso back to Steelport, heading up to heaven, and heading down to the underworld or hell out whenever you want, going back and forth whenever you want. But sadly, that's not how it would have been happening. But it could have happened if that were to have been the case. But Volition shit the bed on that opportunity to fully expand on the time traveling part. But I'm just saying, that could have been a good thing for the Saints Row franchise. And then Saints Row 5 would be made, where it's just the same old shit, but new factions, new enemy gangs coming in, pushing the Saints and their coalition out of Steelport, and then out of Santo Ileso back to Stillwater. The Saints going back, reclaiming 2 out of 3 of their cities back. And then Saints Row 5 could be the very game that could have had the Jacks taken over. And yet, with the Jacks taking over or being in the woodworks, and with no one or no crews or no empire to control Steelport, new gangs shows up and then taking over the city of Steelport. The Jacks would come out of the woodworks, wiping out all the competition, taking over, and Steelport would become Jack's territory. And the Saints HQ would be given by the boss, who would be a former protagonist of the Saints Row franchise. And the Jacks would become would be welcomed with open, loving arms by the fans as the new Saints, a badass 3rd Street Saint crew. And the protagonists, which would be a family, a biological family that was running the Jacks, that was running Steelport. They would have the Saints HQ from Saints Row the Third, and the portal to Paradise and the Underworld would be still active, even attached to the very building that would go into new ownership if that were to happen. But I digress. As time goes on, who knows? Saints Row might end up going this prequel. And hey, I'm not hating. I'm not hating on the prequel idea. I'm just saying. The prequel would do good. And who knows, maybe Saints Row 5 would end up coming out finally. Or become a real thing. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. Just saying. I'm just saying. But anyways, that's been my commentary on Saints Row 4.